when it's fun to learn, it's easier to learn, and it's all about fun and creativity. I would say a world that needs that soapbox is a world that's very boring, and it's a world where people aren't having fun, and it's a world where people aren't being creative. And so your story world could be like Borington, right? Where everything is boring and everything is dry, and everybody would visit from outside are always like super dry and super boring. And but inside your house, you are teaching kids, despite the fact that the world is gray and the world is boring, we can now create the color and the life inside of here, and now we can affect that world out there and actually make that world a better place. Tell us just a little bit about yourself, a little bit of comic book origin story, so to speak.
Yes, well, I grew up in London, England, so I was very influenced by the British comedians and actors of that time, like John Cleese, especially John Cleese, actually, and Are You Being Served, and those type of shows, and actually Benny Hill I really enjoyed. So also Benny. American comedians like Robin Williams and Gilda Radner and Larry David, those people. So I feel I took a little bit from everyone, and I came to America. I actually went to grad school I became an art teacher in art education. I have a master's from Columbia in art education. So while I was in grad school, I was doing some stand-up comedy, adult material, actually. And I wasn't very good in the beginning. I failed a lot. I bombed a lot, as they said. And eventually, years later, I got much better. And I decided, actually, that since my comedy was kind of clean, smart, sophisticated, especially because it was clean, that I wanted to use my teaching background, my talents as a teacher, as a fun, kind of innovative teacher and artistic teacher, creative person as I am, and my abilities in comedies make people laugh and kind of make a marriage of the two. So I decided to do this kids TV pilot. And because my teaching was in ages K through 12, so I mostly dealt with 4 to 8 year olds. Since I'm very childish myself, and I really resonate with that type of age group, and it kind of comes naturally to me. So I started doing this YouTube series and started just in my apartment, which is very appropriate for today, actually, because we're all cooped up inside. But had a green screen at times and just started like improvising in front of the camera and creating these little skits. Some of them were very educational. Some of them were just fun. Then I kind of teamed up with an editor who said this would be a really great TV pilot. So I felt that there was something missing in the market. And I felt that I could be that missing link somehow, because I wanted to teach social emotional learning through these comedic sketches and these really zany, wacky, over-the-top characters. And I think I did a pretty good job with that. And it's not stuffy, you know, and I know Sesame Street does that. And I actually wanted to bring back the nostalgia of like Mr. Rogers and Pee-wee's Playhouse, and, you know, bring that all back, but in a very fun way where kids weren't, you know, like not stuffing these educational stuff down their throats, you know, like they were having so much fun that they would be learning through kind of like osmosis, you know. So that's what I did. I created this little TV pilot, 12-minute TV pilot, with the help of this editor, mostly in my apartment with a green screen. Came out pretty well. And then I also went on in the last number of months to develop a pitch Bible, which I was told that you need. So I spent about 7 months creating that and really building the world, the story, building up the characters, their background more, their likes, their dislikes, future episodes, things like that. So my main passion is really performing, but I love the writing too. So I like to do all parts in a way, like getting everything together and, producing it and writing it. And, I did everything from the props to the costumes.
Wow.
And some animation in it as well. I love mixed media, collage, and I taught a lot of collage to the kids. And I'd like to incorporate that into my work.
So, have you been housing most of your content on YouTube at this point, or like where does most of your content live?
Well, it was on YouTube as a web series. I was putting out like a skit a week, I'd say, or 2 skits a week. On Facebook through YouTube, I guess that was.
Okay.
And then I decided to just take this idea for a web series and make it into a pilot. So I have it as a pilot now. And then I also have the sizzle reel on YouTube. That's all I have right now is on YouTube, is the sizzle reel, really.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, gotcha. So how many episodes of the web series did you produce?
Well, I produced 1 episode.
Okay.
Yes, it was 1 episode with the different characters in the episode showing up and teaching the lesson, which is never give up, in their own unique way. And a lot of the things I want to teach kids are like, when I mentioned social emotional learning, germs, how to stay healthy, especially time of Corona is very appropriate. Sure. Manners, being a good friend, tidying up after yourself, these very simple things, but these are very important. Even parents can learn something from it, that kind of thing. I love comedy, and I like smart comedy. And I think just because a kid is a kid doesn't mean that you can't be smart with them. And they're very sophisticated nowadays. So they say in studies that at the age of 4, kids start to get humor. And I love the way Mr. Rogers did introduce people. And he was actually a priest, so not that I'm that holy.
I didn't know that. Wow.
But I love that, like, soulful, spiritual kind of touch, Teaching these kids also, they can be whoever they want to be,
Sure.
Teaching them young, women, men,
Awesome.
Just because where they are doesn't mean they can't rise above where they are and can't have a dream, We all have a dream, and I think that dream should be nurtured. My dream is to have this kids show, to have the partner with the right production company who sees the value of this. I mean, everything is about money, of course. I know that. I have a question for you. I don't know if this applies still in this day and age. Well, I've always heard that you need like 1 million views on YouTube, which of course I don't have, and I never did have. I never had like a professional marketing person. Is that true that you need like 1 million views on YouTube to get anyone in the business, a production company, producer, or network interested in kind of developing your show? Or is that not so true anymore? It still stands true?
So it still stands true in a sense. I mean, because we talk a lot about the value of what's called pre-awareness in the market, and the decisions in entertainment, specifically Hollywood, are made not based on talent or quality. They're made primarily on risk, right? It's always a risk analysis of because there's so much money at stake. Being able to whether to drop a bunch of cash into a venture or not, and everybody's afraid of getting fired. Everybody's afraid of kind of being the person that loses a tranche of money, and so everything's a risk analysis. And the thing that determines the risk is the amount of pre-awareness that you have in the market. And so this is why you see so many movies based on books or TV shows based on books. It's not because there's a magical thing with books. It's because there's some sort of market presence, some sort of pre-awareness already established in the market that they can point to as an executive when they greenlight something and say, they sold X amount of books. And, I feel comfortable that there's an established audience that if we released a TV show or a movie into the market, there would be people there to watch it. And, that is a frustrating and very sort of ill-conceived sort of paradigm that they use to be able to determine that. But that is, that's a thing. And so now in today's market, it's not just books, right? They're looking at pre-awareness as created anywhere, right? Like podcasts or YouTube videos or TikTok videos, and we've seen, especially in the past 2 years, the explosion of things that that are now being optioned for film and television that are gestating on short stories on Wattpad, or podcasts primarily are just like super hot in Hollywood right now. Web series, things like that, are just getting picked up without representation. Even they'll just it's frustrating when you talk to agents. Actually, agents are panicking in Hollywood because the studios see web content, they see an audience being formed, and they go directly to the content creators and just move around the agent or the representative, that's really disrupting that part of the industry. So pre-awareness is still a thing. But is there a magic number like you need 1 million views? Not necessarily. I had an executive explain it to me like this. He said, if you just have a good idea, if you have imagine a scorecard, and whenever you're meeting with somebody, you're pitching an idea, that investor or that executive has a scorecard, and if you just have a good idea, it's worth 0 because everybody has good ideas, right? If you have a good idea and you've actually done something with it in the marketplace, right? That's worth 10. If you've done something with it in the marketplace and actually have fans, that's worth like 100. And then if you, obviously, the more fans you have, it's going to benefit you, right? Like it's really these exponential jumps that take place. And so is there a magic number? I don't think so. I think a lot of what obviously big numbers help. A lot of what they look at is trends. So if you're just showing a trend moving a certain direction, and if you have 20,000 subscribers on your YouTube, and you've grown that over the course of 3 months, you've gone from 0 to 20,000. That shows a good trend line, and a lot of times that trend line's enough to kind of knock it over the fence to where there's something here. They didn't get to 1 million, right? But we see it moving in the right direction. So that's a super long way to answer your question. Is just yes and no. Pre-awareness matters. Magic number, I don't know if that's necessarily a thing, but we got to figure out how to create some market presence first. Well, I think one of the biggest missteps that we always talk about is just trying to go to the production companies too early, without having established that pre-awareness in the marketplace first. What do you guys think?
We call that in the sales world. I do a lot of the sales development. You don't want to burn the lead. And I don't think you're spot on, Houston. There is no magic number, but you do have to have some numbers. You do have to have some community built up, and you have to have that good idea. You're building up the numbers to enough to get in front of the right person. Because sometimes if you have this brilliant idea and you only had 200,000 views, but those 200,000 views hit a community of certain, whoever was watching, one of those people in there was watching, who knows such and such exec over here, and such and such producer over there, then they say, hey, this is this cool idea that I saw, and it seems like to be trending in the right direction. People kind of like it, but it hasn't blown up majorly, but it blew up enough to get in front of the right set of eyeballs.
Right.
You only need 2 set of eyeballs. So what you're doing, you're playing that numbers game. Mm-hmm. And then when the right 2 set of eyeballs mixed with the idea is solid and have some legs, and that's the cool thing. When you talk about not just brag about our super story approach is there to help people have the best shot of getting those right 2 eyeballs on multiple platforms, having a strong enough world where they can, if they try to pick it apart, that these people are saying, you know what, they have this, they have that. It's just kind of fortified. And because it's interesting what you said. I'm glad you shared those views, because I think everybody's saying, how do I get my products? They won't even take my phone call. Hey, do you have an agent? I have this good idea. It should be out there streaming in front of people. I want to help the world. You want to help the children, and you have a good heartbeat and messaging of what you're talking about. And I think something like that is warranted and needed. But then you just have to come with that foundation to get it
market
out there.
presence, yeah.
So it's good. This is good.
Natasha, the first step that we always spend the most time on with most people, I think, and we actually don't have to spend a lot of time in with you, is this thing we call soapbox. Is why are you doing what you're doing? What's that purpose behind your entertainment? And that is this foundational element that you need to then build the entire brand on. And it's shocking and depressing how many people that we talk to that don't have that, right? They just see a market opportunity. They just, they have a good idea, but there's no gas in the tank when it comes to sort of the passion of a deeper purpose of why they want to do what they do. But you have that in spades, which I think puts you like 30 miles ahead of everybody when it comes to being able to push these things forward, like what you want to achieve with the soulful, spiritual healing of kids, the social emotional learning aspect of it. I think that's just like super cool, and I don't know, for me, just like hearing you talk about it, it's such an interesting thing, and I think it's so important to help separate you in the market, but when you hear somebody talk about something that they're actually passionate about, it's inspiring. I mean, I'm sitting here, across the country on a Saturday morning, listening to you and getting inspired and getting revved up. Man, we should do our own kids content. This is awesome. Like this, like it's super cool and super inspiring just to hear, to see somebody operating in their lane with such a good purpose and such a good motivation. I think that's super cool. So I think that first, and that's always the first step that we work on, which we have that. So I think we're good there. What do you guys think? Soapbox, I think, is there.
Yeah, like I love this Ben Franklin quote that you have on your website. Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. And just from cycling through the content you have, you're definitely involving the kids in the content. I like what you were talking about, John Cleese, and I love Faulty Towers, and I love all that type of physical comedy, which it seems like you're really leaning into, which obviously kids love, but I think it doesn't matter what age, even parents and adults can kind of connect to that as well. So I think that's really important.
Can I just mention something? Can I interject?
Sure. Yeah.
Just as an important thing made me think of something. They've actually done studies on kids, and a lot of the stuff you see out there is animation, a lot of animation. And they've done studies that kids actually learn more and absorb the information better when they see live characters. So I've noticed that mostly the stuff out there is animation.
Yeah.
And what I like is that I'm putting in a little bit of everything. I've got a little bit of this, a little bit of basil, a little bit of cumin, a little bit,
Sure.
some animation, live action, and mixed media. I have both, so they can get it on all areas and be entertained, So, so I think that really needs to come back too, the live performance. Not that I want to play all the characters. I really only want to play the host. I want some other people to be around me, share the limelight there. But so that also got me thinking too,
It's really interesting it's so funny because I right now I have a kid. I'm the only one that of us three guys here that actually has a kid in the demographic that you're focused on, the 2 to 6. I have a 6-year-old, and so all Travis's kids are grown. How old's Max? Max is your youngest. How old's he, Travis? He's 10.
10.
Okay, that's what I thought. Right.
Yeah.
But it is interesting seeing the way my little girl, how differently she responds to animation as opposed to live action. She's been watching incessantly these two guys, and they're two physical comedians, and they just read storybooks and they sort of act all goofy, and she that like zeroes her in in a more intense way than any of the cartoons that she'll watch. Like with the cartoons, it's almost like a passive thing. She can be doing other things with those cartoons in the background. But when these guys are on there doing sort of the physical comedy aspect, man, she's like right there with them. So I think it's an interesting point that you bring up, and what we're looking at too is in a commoditized, oversaturated space. Like I think the kids market is, you're looking for what we call special sauce. And, what's that thing that can just separate you from the crowd? And if you see the trend going in the animation side of things, right? Which we know a lot of people in animation here in Hollywood, and there is a tremendous boom in animated kids stuff. While they're zigging, you zag back to live action. I think that's a smart pivot. So
yeah, and like you said, you have done some animation. So like in our super story approach, it's kind of hitting the audience from a lot of different levels. And then there's different production timelines involved with, so you can have lots of different content getting out at the same time for that pre-awareness. So it's easier to do piece of audio content, so you can maybe do that more frequently. Animation, you can do your live action stuff you can do. So it's good to have that mix like you're doing. But yeah, definitely lean into what it is that's making your content special, which is that live physical.
So what one of the first things I would do is take that web series that you pulled off and put it back on. I think because when I went to go do a cursory, just looking you up on YouTube in prep for today's meeting, I went to your YouTube page, and there was the sizzle reel, which I saw, which is super cool and super fun. There's the 30-second spot, but then there's no other there's no other presence there, right? And so I think that is, going back to that pre-awareness conversation. I think that's critical because people can get the wrong idea about you not having any content up, right? Like they could go to your YouTube and they not see any videos. They don't know that you actually had an award-winning web series that was super popular that you then pulled down in preparation for the TV pilot. An executive will just go and check it out and say, wait a minute, this lady hasn't done any videos. How do we know whether people actually like her or not? So I think market presence, I can't underscore that enough. Market presence is so vitally important. The more content you have out, the better chance of that you have to push this thing forward. It's a volume game. In a commoditized market, in an oversaturated market, volume is a strategy that allows you to compete. And you want to toss like 15 fishing rods out there, like fishing lines in the water, right? You don't want to just have one. But when you don't have any presence at all, especially in the kids space digitally, you don't even have a fishing line at all, right? Like that's like according to the perspective of the executives that would see that. There are people that can misunderstand that easily. So if you have that content, I would reissue all of it like today, as soon as we get off.
My only concern is it's not like the pilot is much more professional and polished, and the web series was done like guerrilla style, and it's not professional. Does that matter?
No. The calculation.
Homemade.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. Like I think this is the trick. This is the trap, and I'll let you guys weigh in on this as well. But I think the trap that creators have is they are immediately put on the defensive because of some sort of sense of my stuff isn't quite professional enough. Right now in COVID, what's cool is that we watch TV all the time. And the quality now has dropped tremendously because everybody's producing content from their home. You're watching ESPN with First Take and a massive budget show, and you just see basically like almost a Zoom call of these people just zooming in from their home. With like this, like if there was any time to release content that you create in your living room, it's right now. because everybody's expectations have been lowered, honestly. And kids don't care, right? And the only thing that the execs aren't looking for you to have a professionally produced show. They're looking for the idea. They're looking for the like the charisma of you, the talent, and they're looking primarily at the numbers. They know that if they put money behind you, of course they can kick up production budget, right? But I think the expectation of having having a professional production right now has been alleviated in the market. I think the benefit of having content far outweighs, not even closely outweighs the detriment of not having anything. I think that's
Look at FGTV, blew up. Guys, these guys are making millions of dollars now, that family. But the production hasn't changed much. They've done some higher production things like music videos and stuff. The guy who plays a video game with his sons and his family, FGTV. But he started off simple production and playing a video game, and him and his son and superimposed in a little box in the corner and talking and narrating. That hasn't changed, and kids loved it. We're trying to build numbers and impress the kids more than we're impressing the execs. The execs look at the number and the allurement that you have with your audience, and then, like Houston said, they put the money behind it. You're right now you're missing out on the eyeballs just by having that down. It should be existing and out there little 100%. By little.
100%. I mean, it's
go ahead. I have about 30 little skits, 30 or 40. I guess I could put. How would you do it? Like one a week, or what would you do?
Yeah, that's the beauty of it, is you have some content ready to go. Now you just orchestrate a little bit of a campaign involving, several different platforms where, you have a release schedule, and you could start to mount some of those consistent audience numbers at that point.
And here's character.
And here's one more thing. Is one thing that they judge too. I didn't mean to cut you off, Trav. Is one thing they judge too is they're also looking at the. I had an executive tell me one time. He said, "I don't just bet on the horse. I bet on the jockey as well." So I don't bet on the horse. I bet on the jockey as well. So the horse here is the creative idea, but having the volume of content up also says something about you, that you have like the grit and the determination as a creative and as sort of the central personality, that this isn't just sort of a fly by night. I'm going to do this for a limited amount of time. But if you can show like, hey, wow, she has hundreds of videos up, she has all this content and this massive brand presence, that says something about you, because they're not just investing in the IP, they're also investing in you. And so being able to kind of show that you have that grit, I think is an important aspect of it, that could help you obviously move that ball forward. So, Trav, what do you think?
I was going to say that, and thinking of things of her, not having just a lower level production of things going for your main character.
Sure.
I'm thinking, since you watch so much, Houston, you do a lot of things with your daughter on TikTok. She watches TikTok videos. Sure. I think that whatever the main character's name should have a TikTok, because you can do those.
100%.
You said weightlifting with the eyelash weightlifting. That's a cool 1 minute. You should have an Instagram where you put up tips and tricks, because you were talking about, right now you see there's rude, obnoxious, no boundaries. There's a lack of kindness in teenagers. That's kind of the prevalent mood, attitude. You could have some things coming from your character on Instagram, just cool little sayings, and it's all drawing back and building an audience and building up that brand around the show. I think, a lot of parents are on TikTok and Instagram with their kids. They show them things, and kids are just delving into these things a lot earlier. I mean, am I wrong? I could be wrong. I mean,
no, I think you're right. I think you're right. And one thing that I think, when I'm looking at your stuff, one area of concern is so the demographic reach. I think in order to get numbers, you need to broaden your demographic reach, because your demographic, you need to have obviously that target market, 2 to 6 year olds, if that's the targeted content is. But I think you need to open doors in the brand to something beyond just the 2 to 6. And because when you target parents, me as a parent, at least, a lot of times I will, I'll decide, what to let my little girl watch and what not to let her watch. And when you're talking about even something like Instagram, how many 6-year-olds are on Instagram? Probably not a lot, right? But their parents are. Their parents are on Facebook. Their parents, and if you can create content that is targeted to the parents of the kids, and maybe you're not the weightlifting eyelash person, or you're not a character, but you're the educator with a master's degree from Columbia, talking about the social and emotional learning of the children, and you're targeting parents with the soapbox, and with the content, and giving them tips and tricks and some education. I mean, just the fact that you said, hey, kids learn more with live action than they do with animation. The fact that you told me that as a parent, coming from a research educator like yourself, that brought me value this morning, right? That I didn't have before we talked, right? You could probably do that all day long. And if you're bringing parents value, and then the parents know that you have a kids show for their kids who are at home, then all of a sudden now they'll say, hey, Timmy, check out this thing, or they'll pull it up on the iPad and expose themselves to them. So one thing that I would do, this is just a little social media trick, is I would research Facebook dark posts, right? Facebook dark posts, and what that is that uses the Facebook ad, the ad functionality, the ad platform, the advertising platform, and the advertising platform is pretty robust on Facebook, and because it allows you to really target who gets the content and who gets the advertisement, and so you can go in and target, moms 18 to 35 who are homeschooling their kids. Like, you can really kind of get in there and tailor who gets the content, and actually the more you tailor it, the better. And what's cool is then you upload your advertisement, right? But what's interesting is you don't actually have to upload like an advertisement, like a normal commercial. It's just you upload a piece of content, you upload a video. But if you make targeted content to the parents of preschool kids and kindergarten kids, and you deliver it in the Facebook ad program, the ad platform, all of a sudden, mom who's on Facebook in the morning, like, your stuff pops up into their feed, and all of a sudden you're not waiting for people to find you on YouTube or Facebook. You're actually now pushing content to them, right? And give them a little 2 to 3 minute, thing that they could watch. And all of a sudden, then have that be an entry point to lead them back to the kids' content that you also house there, right? I think that would be
one
cool.
thing is, I want to be truthful about one thing. I was a teacher many years ago, so I mean, I still have that degree, of course, and I still have that experience. But I don't want to confuse people, make them think that I'm currently like this full-time teacher or something, And it was art, it was specifically like elementary education,
Sure, but I still think that's great. I mean, like that's like, I think, obviously be transparent and be authentic. But I wouldn't, that's part of your story, and I think that's part of your superpower. I wouldn't hide it, for sure. I would put it out there, and that creates that it creates credibility. And you can say, like, go ahead, Brad.
I like what you were saying, Travis, about on Instagram is another place where the parents are going to be hanging out. And I see on your website you have the words of wisdom, Ben Franklin, Albert Einstein, any of these more type of quotes that pertain to learning and how to teach and things like that. You could have a whole Instagram feed, with imagery and quotes that, again, like he's saying, is going to lead back to the parents saying, oh, well, she has some valuable content for my kid, so now I'm going to bring my child over to YouTube or whatever the videos are at.
Yeah,
that's another way.
And those Facebook ads, the Facebook ads aren't very expensive, right? I mean, they're like shockingly affordable. And if every morning, because I know like my wife's a homeschool mom, and there's so many homeschool moms and homeschool dads out there right now that because of COVID are being forced into a homeschool situation, and they're stressed out about it, right? If every morning like you pull up Facebook and there was Natasha who says, I don't want to take up too much time, but this is for you, homeschool mom. I just want to give you a little piece of encouragement this morning. Here's what Ben Franklin said. Boom, a little inspirational quote. Go out and get them today. I'm telling you, a little 30
or
seconds
even like
that would be so
even
valuable.
You can even attach that to, you have 30 pieces of content. You said, each one of those has a video for the kid to watch, so a little part for mom and then a little part that she can show her child, that's a great way to target.
Yeah. I think you get the parents just as much as you get the kids. I think they have to go in tandem. So, and it's different pieces of content. Obviously, the parents are going to be or aren't going to be as attracted to sort of the goofy physical comedy that the kids will be attracted to. But I think you can bring value to the parents in a different way. And it kind of, if you hit on both of those tracks simultaneously, now it's going to build that brand just in a broader, more cohesive whole, right? One thing creatively I want to talk about, guys, is one thing that I would like to hear more about how you tweak this, Natasha, for the TV pilot. It is, when I was taking notes, I was looking at your sizzle reel. One thing that I remember as a kid that I loved so much, watching Sesame Street, especially Pee-wee's Playhouse. I'm glad you referenced Pee-wee's Playhouse because I don't remember anything that I think I saw in any episode except the story world of Pee-wee's Playhouse, right? Like I don't never remember like the specific situations or anything like that, but I remember that world that they were in. And Sesame Street, even Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, they had a consistent, coherent story world that we talk a lot about in broader entertainment. But I think with kids content, creating a consistent story world creates story potential that you can actually mine across platform. One of the things that I love about Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is that Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, they had the train set, right? That was there. The trolley set, and but now that like what my little girl watches is Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, and Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood is the cartoon from it's the spin-off cartoon of the train set that was in Mr. Rogers' house, which is cool. She had no idea. I connected it back to her in a cool Transmedia way, but that created the fact that the creative decision to create those characters that live inside that train set, like that actually created story potential. Now 30 years later, my little girl can have a cartoon that has her actually operating inside that world, right? And so one of the issues that I see for you is just scalability, right? Because it's difficult to scale one person. And right now, I know you have a little bit of a team listed on your website, but you're kind of a one lady show, and be able to scale a brand around one person is difficult. But when you create a story world around that one person, now you create opportunities where you can kind of spin off some other ideas that explore different parts of the world that alleviates you as the actor from having to necessarily perform it all, right? Whether it is in animation.
I think it's going to be too much for me to do all the characters. I didn't expect that at all,
Yeah.
That was just, it was an able character. But in the Pitch Bible, it's really the Pitch Bible. Actually, people tell me that it's very developed, my show, because the Pitch Bible really talks a lot more about the characters and their backgrounds and future episodes. But that's an interesting idea. Like you said, they're not going to probably want to revolve it around one person, and I understand that. So what is the solution? Like you're telling me the solution, and I'm trying to understand a little bit better. If you could elaborate. Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So when we're talking about a story world, we're talking about the interesting place where the stories happen, right? And imagine again Sesame Street, the Pee-wee's Playhouse. In sort of broader entertainment, the story of Black Panther is King T'Challa vying for the throne against Killmonger. That's the story, but the story world is Wakanda. The story of Batman is, Bruce Wayne's parents are killed. He grows up, becomes a ninja, fights bad guys. That's the story, but the story world is Gotham. And so the story world then becomes a separate asset that works in tandem with your individual stories to create sort of future and broader story potential for your brand. And I think for kids stuff, you need to consider that just the geography and the location of where all this stuff takes place, right? And whether it's whatever it is it is it a neighborhood? Is it just a house? Is it obviously Pee-wee's Playhouse was just his house. Sesame Street is just a street, right? Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
House. It's just my apartment. Yeah.
So, the apartment, it could be where you physically do the production, but you can sort of, I don't know, you can say this is a different planet that you're on, or
you can name it. Dimension. I was looking at that. I was wondering what it was called, or like, where does this exist? Because it does lend itself to existing somewhere. These characters, and they're kind of cool, oddball. Then let's have this cool, fun, oddball world, because I know I used to want to visit Sesame Street. There's across the street. Yeah. I said, well, when I was little, I thought it was across the street from me because they had the sign up on my library and in the hood, but Sesame Street wasn't in the hood. I found out. I went across there and there were some hobos. I'm like, this isn't Sesame Street.
Sure.
Yeah, I was waiting to get to this point because I was curious, just looking at your photo gallery. You have an artist in Paris. You have a pirate on a pirate ship. You have a wildlife expert out in the wilderness. So even though you are just in your apartment, with green screen and production, you have characters that are all over the place. Mm-hmm. And I was curious, kind of in your show Bible, how you're tying that all together.
Well, I think that's kind of cool, Brad. Like you just mentioned something to think about, Natasha. It's like, maybe this world is somewhere like you have your accent. Obviously, somewhere in England, London, somewhere, right? A place where whether this world is where all these different nations converge, where they kind of live, they cross paths without having to fly all these miles. Like you brought these nations into a single world that exists in a football field size or apartment size, if you will. But just bringing the countries together, cultures together.
Sure. Or if you had if there was a dollhouse, right? And if you had a dollhouse, and then inside the dollhouse you had sort of like little action figures that was a pirate, and that was all the different characters, and they're all in there. And one of my favorite books as a kid was Indent in the Cupboard, right? I love the Indent in the Cupboard, where that's awesome. The toys come to life when you're asleep. But if you create sort of that that interesting story world where these characters live, and you can figure out how to make that consistent and coherent, all of a sudden that just becomes a separate asset, because here's what you can do. One, I think it helps the show, right? Having that consistent story world. One thing, if you noticed with VeggieTales, right? VeggieTales was kind of done independently for several years. Once it went over to Netflix, Netflix changed it to VeggieTales in the House, right? Where they created a story world of the house where all these vegetables live. It wasn't just like separate, disconnected episodes. And so you see this as a trend in modern media to kind of create some sort of unifying narrative universe where all these things live, right? And but what it can also do, if you created sort of your own Narnia, for example, right? Then you can still tell the story about the pirate, and still tell the story about the chef that's teaching you how to eat spaghetti and things like that. Like, you can still do all those things, but I think it gives you an interesting opportunity to now scale the brand and do some things maybe in publishing, right? Start writing and publishing some books and some novels from inside the brand and inside that world that may be targeted to a little bit older than 6 years old. Right. So remember how I was talking about making sure that you diversify the demographics of your brand. I think getting into the early reader market is good, and sort of that the early elementary, not just the preschool market, but the early elementary market, or maybe even the teenage market. Right, doing some teenage type adventures, inside this world, because as an educator, like right now, my daughter's learning to read, and she's now in first grade, so she can read a little bit. But we're super looking for these books that say, reading level 1 or level 2, and we're getting these books of like that are really targeted to the age range where she is reading. I think you have the opportunity to create all those things in the publishing side that one would be educational, but then two could be telling these other adventures that are also in this world and expanding the market of your brand. Does that make sense? I think publishing is a big opportunity for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I love the thought of even hitting. It's tough to hit like the teenage market, but in that world, we mentioned people get older. If they're not taught early, if you don't catch them early, make things fun and simple things, not just the academics, but being polite, being kind. And if we show a certain world of teenagers, and teenagers will relate to this, obnoxious, no boundaries, kindness doesn't exist.
Sure.
There are teenagers out there who can be mobilized, who actually want to do good, and who see they're at school and they're like, you know what, that guy's a jerk. The people over at that table, they're jerks, they're mean, they're rude. That goes on. So you mobilize those people. You make within this story world that live in there. We touch on all of that, and we mobilize. There's teenagers who volunteer and like to help younger kids, and
sure,
there's a lot of potential here because the key with Super Story is being able to hit multiple demographics, and we're bringing them to this place that the place represents being fun to learn and being kind and just. Because we're bringing them back to the soapbox, so you're in your way impacting the world in a positive way. So that's what we got to be thinking of.
Here's an idea. Here's what I would do: is a lot of times in story world development, what we do is when you create your soapbox, then the first step of world building is to say the story world that I need to build is a world that needs my soapbox. So if it's a world that is already reflective of your soapbox, it's a utopia which doesn't allow for a lot of conflict, which means there's not good drama. But if you can say, here's my soapbox and here's a world that needs my soapbox, it immediately creates conflict in the world, which I think is the heart of story, is good drama and good conflict. Even I think in kids stuff, right? And obviously we're not talking about like with the early preschoolers, you have to show like really intense conflict, but you can show some interesting fun conflict. So if let's say your soapbox is when it's fun to learn, it's easier to learn, and it's all about fun and creativity, I would say a world that needs that soapbox is a world that's very boring, and it's a world where people aren't having fun, and it's a world where people aren't being creative. And so your story world could be like Borington, right? Where everything is boring and everything is dry, and just like and you know how in Pee-wee's Playhouse they had like the mailman would always come and deliver the mail, right? And different things. People would visit. Like it would be interesting to have people visit when you do your show, and everybody would visit from outside are always like super dry and super boring. And but inside your house, you are teaching kids, despite the fact that the world is gray and the world is boring, we can now create the color and the life inside of here. And now we can affect that world out there and actually make that world a better place. Maybe it's Borington, maybe it's Grayville, and everything that's outside of your house is always in black and white, or something like that, right? And because there's no color.
Let's call it Borington,
right?
Let's say it's Borington. I think that just like there should be the opposite. Natasha, your character, who you play, you play these exuberant, gregarious characters. There should be that people group of boring people and that boring teacher who's like Bueller,
yeah, like
right? And then there's kids who are bored, but there's one kid looking out the window, looking into your world, and he wants to have color. He wants to have fun.
Sure.
But the other kids come over and say, no, we should be boring. You can create that interaction, that conflict, that Mr. Borington wants to steal the fun out of everything. So the kids will be like, get away, Mr. Borington. You want to have. Sure. You want to have conflict, and we got to introduce that character group, that people group.
It's interesting.
That threatens the world.
When my little girl, when she was a little bit younger, she would watch Bubble Guppies, and one of her favorite characters in Bubble Guppies was always Mr. Grumpfish, and Mr. Grumpfish was always just in a bad mood, and she loved Mr. Grumpfish, and but that's conflict. but you know, when Mr. Grumpfish wouldn't want to have fun, but it's like, but it's good, wholesome, like kid conflict. It's not like you know, a Star Wars conflict or anything like that. But I think like if you had like a Ben Stein sort of a character that just represented sort of the outside world, and you know, and it just really kind of positions your soapbox as a centerpiece, but also creates that really interesting story world. You know, and I don't know, I think Borrington's kind of sounds British. I feel like that's, you know, in some sort of the outskirts of London somewhere already, maybe.
Borrington Hill is next to Nottingham.
You guys make that up?
Yeah.
Can I have it?
100%. Take it, run with it. Like I think, you know, something like that could be kind of cool, but it just creates that other that broader opportunity. And I'm gonna rattle off here just in the as we bring this to a close. I'm gonna rattle off some ideas that I just had that I think could be kind of cool. That you would have to figure out how to. You don't have to do them all at once, but you know, some things that I just kind of saw that would be interesting. I would do Facebook Live bedtime readings for kids, and you know, there'd be, you know, parents like to read their kids a book before they go to bed. I would do something to where you provide the reading for the parents, and they could just pull up your Facebook thing and have it just a little like 10-15 minute story time with Tashi, you know, before they go to bed. That's something super easy to do, and just have that be a consistent Facebook Live. And that's a little bit different than your filmed videos, which could be kind of cool. Trav, music, I think kids with their music is just like, that's just a thing that is just a wide open market. If you can, I know, because what I love about you, Natasha, is that you're already like listing your team, and so that shows you like on your website. So it shows that you're open to collaboration. You're open to not just be a one-man show, and you're open to have some collaborators. I think it's awesome. I would partner with.
I can't do this all myself. I know I need some input and help. Yeah, for sure.
I would partner.
Her robot character, the robot character, is all about music, right? Loves.
Yeah, you know, some of those characters I haven't developed yet, but yeah, he's musical.
I would do a whole kids album that is you know, maybe with that character as the centerpiece, that leans into some of these educational concepts and create some really hooky, catchy music for kids to listen to, and partner with a musician and who's out there. And listen, musicians right now are really willing to partner and collab because they can't play gigs, they can't tour, they're not making money anywhere else, and so they're looking for any way just to continue to you know, build their brand. That might be an interesting thing. I think 1,000% publishing, right, is self-publish. You don't even have to go through a publisher. Self-publish, make it available through your website. You know, with I would say, because you have an educational lean to your content, if you know what I'm talking about, those like targeted reading books, like level 1, level 2, level 3 of you know, of depending on what age you are as a reader. I think that's smart, and maybe even some little, even like smaller novel things for an old, like a chapter book for a little bit older kids, I think would be kind of cool. I think puppet shows. Would, like the little easy puppets that you could do, you know, like in front of your computer, that would be funny. You can do some, you know, one of my favorite, Brad, I know we talked about these guys before, you know, remember in the Muppets, the two grouchy guys up in the the balcony, right? Like, I think like you could just make a couple characters that are just puppets that are always given sort of this mystery science theater type of like commentary on some stuff, and always like quipping from the corner about some things that could just create a whole puppet side of the brand. Coloring books you can do, I think, and maybe even having some like an interview show. Like, remember Space Ghost back in the day?
Oh yeah.
Right? Like you could.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
That was a fun one. I think you can do some interview things like that. Like, I think there's a lot of interesting opportunity to expand the brand. The more you expand and the more volume you have, the better you're going to be. Does that make sense? It's a volume game and brand presence. The more brand presence you have, the more market presence you have. You're leveraging yourself into the market and into the eyeballs of these executives.
Yeah, and there's a Mr. Robot, huh?
Yes.
Maybe take some of the. I don't know if there's certain songs that kids love melodic songs. Some other groups
Sure.
like all rappers do in R&B. And I do this. I write my songs. Sometimes if I'm stuck, I go back to I'm serious a nursery rhyme, and then I put a hip hop beat over it.
Can you
I
help
sing
me
it
write
R&B.
a rap for Mr. Robot?
I could definitely help you. It's what I do, but that's how I do a lot of things if I'm stuck, because I know that's universal and people they're like, where's that from? Even older people, right? But kids love this. If you take things that have can be older songs, you modernize them. And then if you're talking about triangle,
Sure.
you can create songs, and then you can go on TikTok, and there could be because there's this thing on TikTok where people just are like, and they do this. And you could be drawing squares, and then those things get shared. It brings people into the world.
100%.
These are cool things that kids will be doing. Then their parents could do it with them.
With the robot character, you could call him like the beatbox bot or something like, and he could have all like the beatbox bot. Right. And then he's just like, it has a whole like beatbox vibe to him that, and then do some, because most kids' music is like instrumental, acoustic, right? Like that sort of deal. But if you did like some like EDM, hip hop, the beatbox box, that could be fun and different, right? I think that'd be super cool.
Yep. Yeah. Yes, it's endless. I was trying to think of some songs of stuff about like just learning, and you take modern songs and then you put certain the teaching elements in it.
Sure. Sure. One of the things that I from my childhood, you guess what was the I Am a Bill on Capitol Hill, like all that, like I still remember those songs that were just like so seminal. And if you can like modernize it and do some really super simple stuff and collaborate with a music producer, I think that's an interesting opportunity for you. That one gives you a good video, but also gives you musical content that you can put on Spotify, you can put on Apple Music, and that creates another revenue stream for you, which obviously is important for your brand. But I would, that's the entertainment side, how to expand that story world, maximize those entertainment opportunities. But I would also look at sort of the non-entertainment side of how to build the brand, even just beyond just the entertainment. A podcast where you are talking about the soapbox, right? You're talking about, social and emotional learning in kids and the issues today, and interviewing people that can, even if you don't want to position yourself as the expert, interviewing people that have expertise in that arena, that could be a tremendous resource to people. I would think about publishing a book on like as yourself, not an entertainment book, but like a non-fictional book about here's the problem with kids, and here's how the importance of fun in learning, and self-publish a book that way. Educational platforms, like educational curriculum, I think is me and my wife have been scouring the internet for homeschool curriculum, and looking at different things. And so there's a massive homeschool market that is out there that I didn't even know these existed. Trav, is these like homeschool conventions where you go and there's like massive vendors, and there's all these things, and there's all these curriculums. There's a huge market out there just for the homeschool market, and people looking to homeschool. People that are homeschooling increased 400% since the beginning of COVID, and that does not include the people who are just educating through public schools at home. There's so many people. 400% increase of people pulling them their kids out of school, looking out of the public school system, looking for homeschool content. I think there's like having educational curriculum, Brad, I think is a really interesting opportunity.
And I
don't think it's necessarily having to create a whole curriculum, but using your characters in your story world to help supplement parts of curriculums. So if parents are teaching a certain subject, then there's some of that your story world is commenting on and bringing some fun into that school day.
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be huge.
Be big, right? So obviously that's a lot of stuff, and there's only so many hours in the day, and you only have so much energy. But I would say what you need to do is really examine. I always say pick 3 pick 3 things and just like hit those 3 things hard and kind of get those going, and then figure out how to scale up from there. But I think figuring out that consistent story world is going to be critical to the entertainment side of your brand. I think that's going to help better position your brand, rather than just be sort of the talented entertainer. Now you've created like a broader piece of IP that could be sort of central to being attractive to broadcasters and production companies.
And then you also mobilize people, not just the community. People who see people. If you have the heartbeat and you're always pushing that soapbox out there at the forefront, what you stand for, the heartbeat, how you're trying to change. There's people going to want to come alongside you and promote that. Want to volunteer. Yeah. I mean, when you watch the Tiger King, Carol Baskin, she was making bank because she had volunteers who loved tigers. The other guy was paying everybody. All her people were free because people. She led what I'm rescuing these cats, and whether she's lying or not, she had a heartbeat to her side of the story. Where the other guy was just all about the glitz and glam. So lead with that soapbox in every single thing. I want to help parents who are having problems homeschooling their kids and they're pulling their hair out. I know what you're going through. I'm seeing it. I'm hearing it. Watch this podcast. Here's some things. Here's some content I've created. When you sit them down, they'll actually learn something instead of just consuming bad content that does nothing for their brain. Just lead with it. Then people are like, hey, I want to help this. I'll share this.
Sure. Cool. Is that helpful? Does that give you some good ideas?
Very helpful. A little overwhelming, but helpful.
That's his fault. He spouted off like 30 ideas in a row.
Well,
they're awesome though. Good ideas.
Where is it? It's like you have to do it all yourself. Like it's like, where are the companies that used to help you develop stuff? It just doesn't seem like that happens anymore.
I mean,
I think 3 though.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like I think we're all we're a big vision company, and we love to set out that big vision. I was just looking last night at a tweet from for the official Star Wars account, and they tweeted out like the piece of notebook paper where George Lucas originally outlined Star Wars, and he had episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, the first episode, like now episode 4 of Star Wars, was originally episode 6, 7, and 8. But he had 1 through 12 listed, right? He had the 3 movies outlined exactly, what he wanted, but all the rest were blank, right? And what I thought was interesting about that is, even though he didn't have all the logistics figured out yet, he didn't have all the odds and ends and all the connections made. His initial vision was big, and he had a big idea, and but he didn't know how to accomplish it all. He knew he then had to kind of focus in and say, okay, I got to nail these 3 movies, and then we're going to figure the rest out from there, right? But I think that I feel like one of the missteps that a lot of people have is they say, okay, I only have so many hours in a day, I only have so many resources, I only have this amount of budget, so I have to scale my vision down, and to be able to accomplish that. I think the sweet spot is having big vision, and then within the scope of that big vision, figuring out how to execute in a way that is small, right? But when you execute small with big vision, now you have an organic growth plan, right? And so, take a bunch of ideas and say, okay, for 2 years, I'm going to take these 3 or 4 things and I'm going to try to hit it hard. And or maybe it's 2 things or whatever it is. And I'm going to do that for 2 years. And then in year 2, if all goes well, I'm going to add these other 3 things. But within that time, hopefully I'm going to pull in 3 collaborators, a music person, a children's book author, and an education consultant that can help me develop curriculum. That's my actionable brand goals over the next 2 years, in addition to these creative goals. And if I can achieve those goals, then my phase 2 will be adding these other 3 things. And then you kind of create a 2 to 5 to 10 year plan. Whenever you do a business plan, like a business plan for, a coffee shop or retail store or whatever, you always have to say, this is what I'm going to do now. This is where I'm going to be in 2 years. This is where I'm going to be in 5 years. And this is where I'm going to be in 10 years. And this is how the brand is going to scale over that time. I would encourage you to go through that same process. To take up all these ideas or the new ideas that you have, or even toss all our ideas out and maybe just have, this kind of just like joggle some of your own ideas and say, here's what I can do now. And then here's the steps I need to get to this 2-year plan. Here's my 5-year plan. Here's my 10-year plan, and create some actionable steps in order to get there. And in order to get to year 2, I need these 3 things to fall in place. In order to get to year 5, I need these 5 things to fall in place. And now you have a really super practical road forward, because you're right. It is a lifetime of work. And that's what's awesome about doing something that you love. That is awesome about having that passion of the soapbox, because when you love something and you're passionate about it, when you're 60 and you're 70, you're still going to have a heart for educating children, right? What I love about, I was talking to somebody who's Jewish, and he was saying that in the Hebrew culture, there the word retirement doesn't even exist in Hebrew. That the concept of retirement isn't a thing, and where you just find the thing that you love to do and you do it until you die. And so it's actually an awesome thing that you have a lifetime of work. I mean, that's a blessing to have a lifetime of work, because we're never just, when you find that thing you love, you never just turn it off, right? So I would say, and then when you're willing to be in it for the long haul, that's all of a sudden, that's when people start paying attention and say, oh, you know what? I'm not just betting on the horse. This jockey has something special, and this is real with her. And those are the people that we want to bet on. So I hope this was helpful.
It was really helpful. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
So where can people find your stuff? Where can they get to find you as your website?
They go to www.tashinonstop.com. My website is on there. It says a little bit about me. You can see some photos of my characters. You can email me if you have any questions or you want to connect with me. My email is tashi@tashinonstop.com.
Perfect. Tashi at Tashi
Definitely do the reading thing at night. People love to listen to Brits.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, you're British. That's awesome. Like, yeah,
it doesn't take a lot of time too.
Yeah, awesome idea.
I love
There's
it.
just a lot of the technical stuff that I didn't, hard for me to understand, but, so it helps to hear it from you guys, explain it to me. So.
Good. Well, we promise to keep us updated and stay in touch, and we'll be happy to help, continue to help get you to where you need to be. So,
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.